So the last challenge that Jim presents is the following. He puts here together a bunch of different mitzvahs to try and make fun of them. My uncle has a farm. He violates Leviticus 19:19 by planting two different crops in the same field, as does his wife by wearing garments made of two different kinds of thread, cotton and polyester blend. He also tends to curse and blaspheme a lot. Is it really necessary that we all go to all the trouble of getting the whole town together to stone them, like it says in Leviticus 24:10 and 16? Couldn't we just burn them to death at a private family affair, like we do with people who sleep with their in-laws? As it says in Leviticus 20:14. Okay, so here he's going all out with the last final blow. So what's he talking about here? He's talking about various prohibitions. All of them do exist, but again, he's being a bit misleading here. There is a prohibition in Leviticus to plant two crops in the same field. That's the issur of kilayim, mixing species. And similarly, there is a prohibition to wear a garment mixed of two different threads. However, specifically, first of all, two different crops, that is a prohibition in the land of Israel, nowhere else. It's only a particular prohibition of the land of Israel to plant two crops in the same field. That's a particular thing in Israel and nowhere else. It doesn't apply to Jim in America, wherever he is. And the mixing of two threads is nothing to do with cotton polyester. It is specifically wool and linen cannot be mixed. Wool and linen cannot be worn in the same garment. Now, these two laws also are not liable to the death penalty if one transgresses them at all. So that's misleading. But they are under the category of laws called chukim, meaning laws that are super rational, that we don't understand their meaning. There's nothing morally wrong with wearing wool and linen together, and there's nothing that is contemptuous about somebody having a field where they put two different species and plant them together.
Is it abomination?
It's not an abomination. These are not called abominations. They are chukim, meaning they're laws that we do not understand their rationale. Nevertheless, Maimonides teaches that even chukim, we can try to understand them and have some rationale behind them. And generally, these type of laws of separating things is that in the world that God created, He created various different species, and each one has to be kept distinct and unique. It has to have its place. And by us mixing them together and creating a blend of the two, we're blurring the lines between various species. We have to respect the integrity of creation and leave it the way God did it. And so each species should have its own section in a field. You can actually plant them in the same field as long as there's a bit of a buffer, separation between them. And other species you can mix, but wool and linen cannot be mixed in a garment. But these are chukim that cannot be understood. There have been explanations offered to them, which maybe another time we can go into what the possible meaning of these chukim are. But they are super rational laws. But these are definitely misquoted here. It only applies in the land of Israel as far as planting in one field, and it only applies to wool and linen, not cotton polyester blend. That is fine. But then he brings in cursing and blaspheming, which indeed is a capital offense. That to curse God is a capital offense. It would get the death penalty, as he quotes. There's a story of a blasphemer in the camp who was stoned to death. Now, he makes it look like that he was stoned by the entire town together. The whole town has to come and stone him. And very often when people talk about the biblical stoning, they conjure Monty Python images of everyone coming out and throwing rocks to kill somebody. So first of all, stoning, like all other penalties, were judicial penalties that were given based on a court case. It wasn't that somebody heard somebody blaspheme, so they started stoning them. You couldn't just go around and throw rocks at people. That would be murder. If a person, even they did blaspheme, but if you threw a rock at him and killed him, so then you're a murderer, and you'll be on trial, not him. Whereas somebody who cursed God publicly, meaning cursed the name of God publicly, was warned before they did it, and nevertheless did it anyway.
And two witnesses?
Two witnesses who saw them do it, and the witnesses warned him, he acknowledged the warning, and he nevertheless cursed God, and is then taken to court, and it stands up, the cross-examination of the two witnesses stands up. So in such a case, yes, the death penalty would be given. Again, how common that would be? It'd be very rare. It's one thing for somebody to just blurt out a curse, but for them to be warned about it and still do it, knowing that they're going to risk the death penalty, would be a very rare thing. We're not here saying that nobody can disagree with God. A respectful debate about God does not get the death penalty. There can be dissent, and there can be different opinions, and people can question. That does not get the death penalty. He was saying somebody who loudly, publicly curses the name of God, that's an affront to the very basis of our morality, and somebody who does that after being warned and knowing what the consequences are, has to be stopped, has to be punished. Practically would have been a very rare thing, and the death penalty was not done by the whole town throwing rocks either. Who were the executioners of the blasphemer? Who had to actually throw the rocks to kill the blasphemer?
Witnesses?
The witnesses themselves. The people who witnessed it, they were the executioners. And the actual process of the death penalty of stoning was quite interesting, at least for us, maybe not for the person suffering it. That the first stage was that the person who was found guilty would be pushed off a 2-story building onto a stone floor by the witnesses. Now, that usually did it. If the person survived that, so then a large boulder would be dropped on them by the witnesses to kill them. If they miraculously survived that, so then they would be pelted with stones. So the Monty Python scene was pretty rare that anyone would be actually throwing rocks in such a way. Usually being pushed off a 2-story building. That would be it. But who had to do it? The witnesses themselves. Why? Why them? So for several reasons. First of all, you can think, if you know that your testimony is not just maybe going to be accepted and then he's going to be taken away to some room somewhere and given some lethal injection, but you're going to have to look the guy in the face and you're going to have to push him off. You're going to have to kill him. So you're going to want to really know that you really mean it, that you're for real. Because if not, in Jewish law, if a witness is found to proven to have not been present, and when they claim to be, so then they get the punishment themselves. The witness gets the same punishment they want to inflict. So you're risking your life doing it. You have to really mean it, because you're going to be the one that's going to push this guy off the building. And so the witnesses themselves had to look him in the eye, had to tell him, your blood is on your shoulders. It's not our fault. It's your fault. You did wrong. You were warned. You knew. We warned you. You know who I am. You know I'm the one that warned you, and nevertheless you did it. And then they would be the one to push them off the building. So it was a serious scene. It was something that you would think twice before just making up a story. The fact that it does say in the verse that all the community should stone him. So the Talmud says what that means is that the witnesses are serving as emissaries of the community. They're representing the community by doing this. And this is actually one of the sources that we learn, Shlucha shel Adam Kamoisoi, that a person's agent is like him themselves. The agent of the community to make sure that evil is uprooted from its midst was the witnesses who performed the execution. And the reason the witnesses also have to do it is because they saw it happen. When you see evil happen, you cannot stand idly by. A person who witnesses a wrongdoing and doesn't do anything about it then has some guilt on themselves as well. But we cannot allow wrongdoing to exist in the world and turn a blind eye. In these days, people say, live and let live. If someone else is doing something wrong, you should just let them mind their own business. If you've witnessed wrongdoing and you let it happen, so you're a party to it.
There's a law as well now in France. Even if you witness something happening to someone and you watched it happen, if you don't interfere, you can actually get charged yourself.
Interesting.
If somebody
Seinfeld
gets
as
robbed
well.
or something.
Good Samaritan law.
That's right, the Good Samaritan law. They do this now in France. It's a real law.
Yeah. Okay, well, it'll be complicated.
Somebody dies, somebody gets killed in front of you because then you didn't interfere, you can actually get a huge sentence.
Well, these days people are so scared of being sued if they do anything, or they don't want to interfere. So people will turn a blind eye, and it's horrible to the extent to which people do that. Seeing evil happening and not reacting to it is a reflection of something wrong in you. And so the witnesses who saw it, they're the ones who have to do it.
What about from a Pikuach Nefesh point of view? If you don't want to get involved in two other people, this fight, because you know one of them will turn on you and maybe kill you.
Okay, so it could be that you don't have to risk your own life.
You can call the police or something.
Yeah. But to turn a blind eye and walk away, that you can't do. So therefore, the cursing, the blaspheming was considered a serious. It was actually a serious sin. It wasn't a joke that somebody did such a thing. So it has to be done with. But then he concludes by saying, well, why do we have to do this public? Why can't we do like a private family affair and execute him like we do to people who sleep with their in-laws? So this is, I think, where Jim really shows his real true colours, because he seems to be dismissing this law that, like, someone who sleeps with their in-laws, as if there's nothing wrong with such a thing. Now, indeed, there's no such thing as a private family affair of an execution. Like we said, executions are all judicial. They're all done through the court. There's no private affair. So that's just made up. But he seems to say as if there's nothing wrong with it. As if someone sleeping with their in-laws. What's the big deal? He's dismissing it as a
Minor offence.
yeah, minor offense. Like something that's so insignificant, which it is of course not. That is one example of the Torah's concern for the integrity of the family, and that all the sexual laws in the Torah really are to protect the concept of family, that a man and his wife, that is within that structure, that is where sexuality is permissible and encouraged. Anything outside of that is an abuse of that. And so for somebody to sleep with their in-laws is pulling down the entire structure of what a family is supposed to be. And so to bring it here as like something so dismissive is, I think, an indication that Jim's morality probably needs to be questioned and looked into a bit deeper. So in conclusion, what we see from all of these attacks...
Is it capital though, that one?
Yeah, it is.
In laws,
It is.
yeah?
Yeah, sure. So what we do see from all of this is that the way Jim has presented the Torah, maybe out of ignorance, but it certainly in some places has lacked certain honesty. He hasn't presented the full picture of what the verses say. He certainly doesn't have the perspective, the Talmudic perspective that we have to understand the background behind it. And so even though what he's tried to do is show examples of how the Torah is illogical and archaic and irrelevant and out of touch and silly, what he's actually shown is the opposite, is the depth and the brilliance and the power of the laws of the Torah. That he's shown, like with the laws of slavery, what he was trying to show how barbaric the Torah law is. No, it shows how humane the Torah law is in those particular laws. The death penalty laws shows how the Torah is passionate about justice and fairness and keeping a society at a high level of morality. The laws of separating species or sexual morality is showing that the Torah has a respect for boundaries and borders, that a society can only be built where things are clearly delineated and morality has its clear lines. So rather than proving the irrelevance of Torah to our modern age, perhaps what Jim has shown through these examples is just how relevant, maybe more than ever, the laws of Torah are for today.